Oh, hello there. Me again with another story. I would just like to say thank you so much for the lovely comments people make, and I always try and answer and thank you. I think I've done with every single comment someone's made, and they're all been very, very nice, very supportive. Thank you so much. I'm just pleased you like stories. Nowadays, you know, it's TikTok or, well, I don't know. Maybe I should put this on TikTok. Anyway, this is called The Comeback, and it's the very, very first story I ever wrote. I'd written funny things before, but not stories. This is the very, very first story, and where it came from, I have no idea. I was just driving round the countryside for my work, and all of a sudden this story appeared in my head. And when I got home, I had to rush in and write it down. It's just amazing where these things come from. Anyway, it's called The Comeback. Um, Written by me, read by me, copyright by me, Al Donaldson. And I hope hope you enjoy it. The alarm seemed even noisier than normal. Monty Baxter quickly shot out a well-practiced arm and pressed the snooze button. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His eyes followed the cracks as if following a road on a map. Usually when the alarm went off, he was half asleep, but this morning he was wide awake and had been since 4 a.m. He reluctantly got up, washed and shaved. He didn't feel like breakfast. I suppose I better force myself, Monty said out loud. He'd been talking to himself a lot lately. He put it down to the fact that he didn't have any friends. And if he pulled off this great deal, everyone would want to know him. He started to iron his last one good shirt. It wasn't that good anymore. He'd bought some shirts from a Savile Row tailor's when he'd been successful and flush with cash. Never mind, when this thing comes off, I'll be laughing. I'll have all my shirts made from silk instead of. He looked at the label on the collar, polyester and cotton. The old optimism started to trickle back. He knew this scheme had gold veins running through it. He was convinced he'd struck the mother lode. Unfortunately, no one else did, and there are only so many knockbacks you can take without it making a dent in your confidence. He put his tie on and noticed the tomato seed sticking to it. He scraped it off with his thumb and examined where it had been. Hasn't left a stain. Doesn't bode well if you see a bank manager with a manky tie. He buttoned up the collar and noticed that the button was loose. Damn, damn, damn! I should have checked last night. You couldn't have foreseen this, he answered himself. He ransacked every drawer looking for a needle and cotton. He moved aside boxes of illuminated yo-yos. One day they'll be back in fashion. He made a mental note to start taking them around a few toy shops. He might shift them. But what about the Barbie dolls, dressed like a hooker? He'd made the mistake of thinking they would be a hit. He'd been wrong and not sold one. And he still had 3 gross to get rid of. It was no use. He couldn't find a needle and thread. Don't do anything energetic, and it should be all right. He slipped on his jacket and opened his briefcase. It was all there. He'd made sure last night that everything was perfect. He'd even ironed the sheets of the business plan so they looked pristine. Monty sat waiting patiently for his appointment with the bank manager. His secretary had asked him if he'd wanted a drink, and he'd declined. He would have preferred something alcoholic rather than the tea or coffee on offer. This bank was his last legitimate hope of finance. He'd exhausted all other avenues. Well, nearly every one. There was still Francesca, which was grasping at straws. After her there were loan sharks. He shuddered at the thought. It was very warm in the office, and Monty could feel the sweat collecting in the small of his back. His mouth was dry. Maybe he should have taken up the offer of a drink. No, that would make you hotter, make you sweat more. He stood up to look for a water dispenser. The manager's secretary appeared. He'll see you now. The manager's handshake felt like a wet fish. All the hands of all the bank managers he'd ever shaken had all felt like he was handling a slippery trout or a carp. He wondered whether it was a trait that was cultivated or a prerequisite for the job. He could see the advertisement in the newspaper. Got a handshake like a wet fish? Become a bank manager. Maybe it was a secret handshake, like the Masons. Maybe that was the reason he'd been turned down by everyone. If he could develop a wet fish handshake, they'd all know he was one of them, and the lack of finance wouldn't be a problem. Monty shook his head, coming back to reality. He must focus. The bank manager repeated himself. Mr. Baxter? Sorry, I was just collecting my thoughts. You require a loan to start up a new business venture. Monty nodded. We are always keen to invest in new businesses. We pride ourselves on our ability to help entrepreneurs no matter what it is. Monty's despair lifted. What had he just said? No matter what it is. Oh, yes. Things were looking up. Yes, I've discovered a niche in the market. In fact, there is no market. This is unique. It'll be the only one. The manager gave Monty an appreciative smile. I could clean up big time. I'm intrigued. The manager sat forward. We don't see many niches anymore. What is it exactly? It's the ultimate in recycling. It's so environmentally friendly. It's the ultimate. Monty started to get into his stride. I got the idea when I was reading this book about the Romans. Indeed. Fearing that Monty would go on, the manager interrupted. Could you show me some details? The bank is always interested in new ventures. I must admit the way you enthuse about it has me very interested. Look, it's not your everyday business. There has never been anything like this before. It's not selling anything from a shop or gimmicks. Before I show you my business proposal, promise me you'll keep an open mind. I promise, Mr. Baxter. A bank likes to pride itself on backing innovative projects. Monty Baxter handed over the proposals. The manager read the first page. The manager didn't utter a sound. It felt like an age. Monty got hotter. He inserted a finger to prise his collar away from his sweaty neck. The collar button shot free, missing the manager's head by a whisker, hitting the window behind him with a loud ping. The manager never noticed So engrossed was he in reading the business plan. Monty knew he didn't like it. He saw the beginning of the look that everyone who'd read the proposals had had. When they got to that bit of the plan, ah, there it is, a look of incredulity and disgust, thought Monty. The manager handed Monty back the papers. Good day, Mr. Baxter. It's a good idea. It'll make lots of money, Monty said eagerly. I wish you well. Alas, we are not in a position to help you at this time. The manager stood up and opened the door for Monty to leave. But it's a good idea, protested Monty. It's a disgusting idea, Mr. Baxter. My bank would do not wish to be associated with anything so depraved. It's sick, Mr. Baxter. That's why it'll be a winner. It's disgusting, odious, objectionable, wretched, loathsome, repugnant, and abhorrent. Do you wish me to go on, Mr. Baxter? Now, will you leave, or do I have to call security? There are other banks that will jump at the chance. No self-respecting person would be involved in such a scheme. Monty gathered up his papers and pushed them back into his briefcase. He didn't care any more. He knew he'd never iron them again. Monty Baxter was back on the street. He was 50, fed up and flat broke. All his life he tried to be one step ahead of the clever people, but rarely, if ever, succeeded. He once thought he'd got the jump on them, only to have the product banned as a danger to the public. He'd lost a lot. It had been some years ago. He'd never recovered financially. The best advice he'd ever received was, if a plan doesn't work, make sure you have a backup. Good advice, providing you could think of one. Monty's alternative plan was called grasping at straws, or scraping the bottom of the barrel. That was why he was now waiting in a Greasy Spoon cafe. This was his last chance. He took his tie off. Without the button holding his collar, he looked slovenly and unprofessional. He took a paper napkin and mopped his forehead. He would play this cool. He would ask her to trust him. It would work. Her money could finance the premises, equipment, and transport. Then it would be a matter of sitting back and watching the money roll in. He'd offer her a fair return for her investment. She'd make millions. He was even prepared to do a 50-50 split, if that was what it took to get her money. He saw her, Francesca Pirelli. Monty and she had been very close. He'd been riding high at the time. They'd wined, clubbed, partied. Then the slump had come. The knockbacks, the business difficulties. He hadn't wanted to end it, but she'd noticed they'd stopped partying. Then when he telephoned, she was out or busy till he stopped calling. This time he'd been lucky, and she'd answered the phone. Fran! He'd stood up to greet her as she walked in. 4 workmen, part of the road gang, digging up outside, sitting at a table in the corner, stopped eating to gape at her. She was still a looker, and dressed more for tea at Harvey Nichols than for here. She smiled at him icily. Nice to see you, Monty. When you said bistro, I hadn't realized you meant a grubby transport cafe. The waitress's head whipped round at the comment. Monty flushed. She was right. So targeted was on getting some finance. He hadn't thought. He should have saved up and taken her for tea somewhere more upmarket. He stammered. It's not the place, Fran, it's the idea. If you listen to what I have to offer, you could be eating in the Ritz every day. Francesca liked what she heard and relaxed a little. Monty had no trouble catching the waitress's eye, as she hadn't taken her eyes off Francesca. If looks could kill, he thought. Yes. Fran, what would you like? Fran didn't acknowledge the waitress. She kept her gaze down on the tea-stained formica table. Kappa, before Fran could finish speaking, the waitress interrupted. No Kappa, what's it? Only coffee or tea? Monty looked at Fran, whose eyes had risen to the ceiling. Coffee, she snapped. Cup or mug? Give me strength, gasped Fran, and rose to leave. She'll have a cup. 2 cups of coffee, said Monty, giving the waitress a pleading look. Monty rose also. Fran, stay, please. It's important. I'm sorry I brought you here, but I'm flat broke. What, still? She snapped. He wished he'd not said it. He felt the eyes of the road gang on him, sensing a drama. He was going to say that the cafe was closer to the bank and that he was going to give her the first opportunity. If she said no, he had an appointment with the bank manager across the road, who thought it was a great idea. Now she knew how desperate he was. She sat back down. Fran didn't say anything till the waitress returned with their drinks. Fran tasted the coffee. It was good. Surprisingly, Fran relaxed. Okay, tell me, Monty. Monty felt self-conscious. Maybe it would have been better in a more intimate atmosphere. He decided to stall for a while. He asked her about her health and anything else he could think of to pass the time. Eventually, the road gang lost interest in him and left. A few more people left. The dinner time session was drawing to an end. Monty started to sweat. He rubbed around the inside of his collar, no longer worried about an errant button. He and Fran and the waitress were the only ones in the cafe. Monty first outlined what the returns would be. He emphasized the need for a sleeping partner. You don't have to get involved. I don't expect it. He told her the importance of how trustworthy he was and how the scheme was a surefire winner. Monty stopped to watch the waitress. She was wiping down the tables nearest to them and taking longer than was necessary. He was sure she was listening. Yes, said Fran. Great, said Monty. I mean, to carry on, you seem to drift off. Oh, Monty answered. Well, what is this great idea? Urged Fran. Monty didn't want to tell her, knowing the explosive response he'd got in the past. He wondered what the hell he'd been thinking involving her in this. He decided to take the bull by the horns. Look, if you finance this business, we'll split the profits 50-50. He'd not wanted to offer that much straight off. Now he had nothing in reserve. You haven't told me what the business is yet. You don't need to. You don't need to know. Trust me. Trust you? How can I trust you? When you've been so secretive. You've always been secretive. You never told me anything about your business. If you'd been more forthcoming in the past, maybe we wouldn't have split. Monty felt a sharp stabbing pain across his chest. So much regret, he thought. You want an awful lot of money. How do I know you won't run off with it? That's why you must trust me, pleaded Monty. Fran looked at him, waiting. It was all or nothing. He didn't care if the waitress was listening or not. The road gang started up their compressor. Okay. Just remember, it will make us very rich. He started to tell her. The pneumatic drills chattered loudly in the background. Anyone watching Fran would have noticed that her mouth opened slightly as her lower jaw dropped. Her face turned ashen. Before Monty could finish, Fran stood up. "You're mad. Absolutely mad." She looked down for her bag. "I've never heard of anything so, she fought for the words, like this in my life. It's disgusting. And you really are a revolting individual." "If you just let me finish," Monty shouted. Monty was talking to no one. Fran's place at the table was vacant. The pneumatic drills suddenly became louder as Fran threw open the door. The drills sounded like they were laughing at him. The waitress walked over and locked the door. She turned the sign round to closed. They were alone. Monty just sat there, his eyes fixed to the Formica table. A minute later, an empty coffee cup was pushed under his nose. "I find this helps sometimes." She offered a whiskey bottle. Monty nodded, and she poured a generous measure into the cup. "Mind if I join you?" she said. "It's your place." They sat in silence. Eventually she said, "I was like that, you know, like what you were talking about. Bulimic." Monty looked up. "You were?" "Yes. My husband used to make me very self-conscious, always comparing me to slim women. Believe it or not, I used to be quite waif-like." She laughed as she said it. Monty felt cheered by her laugh. "Now look at me, fat and 40. "You're not fat," Monty protested. "You're—" Monty tried to think of a diplomatic word. She wasn't fat, just a little plump. "Comely," he said at last. "That word's a good choice. Thanks." "Stout, robust, rotund, and my all-time favourite, big-boned. All comes down to flab, but comely, I like that." Monty gulped his whiskey. It warmed as it went down. He started to feel better. Monty smiled at her. "After I had my first kid, he put me under such a lot of pressure to get my figure back. He made me bulimic. In the end, he ran off with an anorexic tart." Monty continued to smile. The sound of her voice was soft and musical. "I couldn't help listening. I thought you were. It was so mysterious. There you were asking for money. I thought it was for drugs." Monty grinned. "Nothing so mundane." "Tell me, how would you get rid of it? That's where all the profit is." "Yes, but how?" she urged. He told her. And after he'd finished, he asked, "So, what do you think?" "Trifle unusual. Don't find it sick, then?" "But of course. You got a business plan?" He opened his briefcase and the papers tumbled out. He explained to her the quantities and the marketing and how after all the setup costs had been paid for, the money would flow in. It was virtually all profit. It would be automated with very low staff costs. Believe it or not, you're the first person I've been able to explain it all to without being shown the door. When you get down to it, it's so simple. All we need is one restaurant, and then it'll just snowball. Have you got one in mind?" she said, looking around her. Well, I never got any further than this." "It's all right. I'm only teasing. It's got to be a reasonable restaurant that's had a reputation for serving good food, but maybe a change of owner or the chef has left and it's started to flounder. They'll be more amenable to the suggestion." "So what are you going to do now? Take it over the road to the bank?" "Went there this morning. Fran was my last hope." "Ex-wife?" "Ex-girlfriend." "My name's Molly Brown. I own this transport caff. Your ex-girlfriend called it." I have a bit of money put away. I don't get much chance to spend it working in here all hours. I've seen your plans, and look, I'd like to invest. Deal?" Molly held out her hand. Monty grabbed it and burst into tears. A few days later, Monty and Molly hesitated outside an ornate door. When they went in, only silence greeted them. No one greeted them at the door. There was no one seated at any of the tables eating. The decor looked plush and opulent, but on closer scrutiny it showed its age and neglect. "It's perfect," Monty said. They could hear raised voices. Sounds interesting." Molly and Monty moved closer to hear. "You're rubbish. You could burn water. I'm the best you could get. I had the best. You drove him away. I only took you on to keep your mother happy." Mario put on a falsetto voice. "Your nephew, Luigi, he just finished his catering college. Take him on at your restaurant. He wants to be a great chef." "Chef my ass. More like poisoner." "I cook good for you," protested Luigi. "I know lots of specialities. Egg and chips, beans on toast, that's all you're good for. This is an Italian restaurant. Whenever I get a new chef to help out, you drive them away with your jealousy. Then why don't you sack me? I don't want to fall out with family. I'd do a favour for your mother, my sister. All I ask is you don't fall out with new chefs. Try and learn from them." Monty and Molly backed away at the sound of breaking plates. The owner appeared through the kitchen door and slammed it shut behind him. The door shuddered as a large pan hit the other side. The owner narrowed his eyes and swore in Italian under his breath. He turned and saw Molly and Monty, and a big smile crossed his face. "I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting." He picked up two menus and ushered them to a window table. "Would you like some drinks?" "Yes," said Molly. "2 whiskies, and have one yourself." The owner looked puzzled. "Yes," said Monty. "We'd like you to join us for a drink. We have a proposition for you." Mario looked intrigued. "Okay." He brought the drinks and sat down. "So, I'm all ears." "How would you like this restaurant to be full every night?" asked Monty. "So full they'll be queuing down the streets," Molly added. "Yes, I'd like that, but first you'd have to kill my chef." "No, we don't want to kill your chef." "You want to buy my restaurant?" "No, we don't want to buy. We have an added service. We will advertise our services and your restaurant, and everyone who comes in and asks for us." Molly interrupted. "They may be nervous about asking for us. I think a card on every table would be better at explaining our services." "Yes, better idea," agreed Monty. "Excuse me, what is this all about?" Mario wrinkled his brow. Molly and Monty told him. Mario's brow grew furrows. 1 month later, Molly and Monty were as good as their word. The Italian restaurant was packed out. The menu had been upgraded to boil-in-the-bag meals. Mario's nephew didn't mind. It was less work for him. The change of the menu wasn't the reason that the restaurant had become successful. Oh no. Molly and Monty had first advertised in Weight Watchers magazine, till the editor had declared the advert in poor taste and refused further adverts. But by then, people were talking about it. The news had spread. It had gone viral on the internet. Television, radio, and the newspapers raved about it when it was announced. The first vomitorium since Roman times had opened in the UK. Don't you think it's a little sick? Asked the interviewer. Lots of sick, Molly and Monty said in unison. Bulimics have had to do their sicking in private. This way they can go out and enjoy a meal with friends. People have been disgorging themselves for years. The Romans are a case in point. That's where I got the idea from. A Roman dinner party would have 50 courses and last all day, and the way they could enjoy themselves was to disgorge the stomach of its contents so they could continue eating and tasting lots of different foods. This modern vomitorium is not just for bulimics. Oh no, it's for models wishing to remain thin. Professional sports people like jockeys and boxers who are afraid of carrying too much weight. Then there are businessmen. They can take full advantage of the business lunch. If they can't quite clinch that deal, they can come here, be sick in comfort, then go back to the table fresh to restart negotiations. So it's not just bulimics, it's anyone who enjoys food but doesn't want the bother of digestion. The interviewer began looking a little green around the gills. Monty leant forward and whispered in her ear, If you're feeling unwell, don't waste it. Come inside, it's okay. The interviewer summoned the strength to quell her nausea and asked the next question. She struggled for the words. What do you do with it? You mean the stomach contents? Asked Monty. She nodded and clasped her hand to her mouth. Yes, well, that's dried and turned into fertilizer. That's another reason why people should come here to be sick. It's good for farming. It means less use of nitrogen fertilizers. It's so much better for the environment. Everyone nodded and agreed. After the initial shock, everyone said what a wonderful idea this was. After all the interviews, Molly got Monty alone. I wondered how you were going to get around that question of what happened to the vomit. It just came to me. I couldn't tell the truth. A lot of people, including us, would have gone broke. Someone did the same for eggs, remember? The produce of the vomitorium was treated and pumped into reusable drums and sold to pig farmers as Wonder Pig Yogurt, pre-digested swill. It was worth its weight in gold. It increased the weight of piglets overnight. A week on Wonder Pig Yogurt, and piglets became huge, strapping pigs ready for market. Molly and Monty's bank balance blossomed, as did romance. She and Monty moved into a sumptuous home on the Thames. Bank managers who once ordered Monty out of their office now sheepishly called him Sir and jostled each other to look after Monty's immense and diverse financial portfolio. To keep the vomitorium costs down, the whole operation was automated. Just 2 attendants were required to supervise the customers. Everything connected to the process was kept out of sight from the public. On a night when the attendants were particularly busy, the alarm sounded, alerting staff to a fault in the system. When the engineer arrived, he found a pair of female ankles protruding from a full drum of pig yogurt. A woman had lost an earring whilst throwing up and had followed the pipes out the back to look for it. The vomitoriums, for they were now nationwide, closed soon afterwards when people found out about pig yogurt. There was some adverse publicity and mud sticks. Molly and Monty protested. It's the ultimate in recycling. It's environmentally friendly. It was to no avail. The revelations that the bacon they were enjoying was produced from vomit-eating pigs was too much for the public to stomach. Public opinion closed the vomitoriums, and the blandness of bacon returned. Mario, like all the restaurant owners involved, made a fortune, retired to Sorrento, but not before telling his nephew that his cooking had been so unmemorable that people had found it quite easy to be sick. Molly and Monty got married, and the coroner brought in a verdict of accidental death on the poor woman found in the pig yogurt drum. He concluded that death had been caused by asphyxiation due to her breathing in her own vomit. Well, it might have been hers. I hope you enjoyed that. I can't tell you. This is, as I said, this was my first story that I wrote, and I really enjoyed writing this. Anyway, if you please share. It's all free. Please comment. I will answer your comments, and I really appreciate it. But yeah, and if you know of a literary agent or publisher who might want to publish this, or a literary agent to take me on, please push me in their direction, or push them in my direction. Anyway, thanks very much indeed, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye now.